I never wanted this job, but after months of unemployment and bills piling up, I took the night security guard position at Blackwood Asylum. The pay was suspiciously high for just sitting in a chair for 8 hours, but I ignored the red flags. On my first night, the retiring guard, a gaunt man named Harris, handed me a single sheet of paper. "Follow these rules exactly," he said, his voice trembling. "If you don't, you won't last the week." I laughed it off until I read them. Rules for the night shift at Blackwood Asylum. 1. Never enter the East Wing. The doors are locked for a reason. If you hear screaming from there, ignore it, no matter how real it sounds. 2. Check the cameras every 30 minutes. If you see a patient in the hallway who wasn't there before, lock the security office door and don't open it until morning. 3. The intercom will sometimes crackle to life at 3:15 a.m. If you hear whispering, do not respond. If you hear a clear voice asking for help, say, "Not tonight," and turn off the intercom. 4. If the lights flicker, close your eyes and count to 10. When you open them, everything should be normal. If it's not, check Rule 2. 5. A man in a white coat will sometimes walk past the office window. Do not acknowledge him. If he knocks, do not answer. 6. At exactly 2:33 a.m., a patient named Marianne will appear on camera 7, staring directly into the lens. Do not look away until she leaves. If she smiles, immediately leave the asylum and do not return until sunrise. 7. If the temperature suddenly drops, hold your breath until it passes. Something is standing behind you. 8. If you find a red door where there wasn't one before, do not open it, no matter what you hear inside. I scoffed. A prank, obviously, but Harris's hollow eyes told me otherwise. "Good luck," he muttered before vanishing into the night. First night. The asylum was silent except for the hum of old fluorescent lights. I checked the cameras. Nothing unusual. At 2:33 a.m., camera 7 flickered. A pale woman in a tattered gown stood in the middle of the empty ward, her dark eyes locked onto the screen. My blood turned to ice. I didn't blink. After a full minute, she turned and walked away. I let out a shaky breath. Maybe the rules weren't a joke. Third night. The intercom hissed at 3:15 a.m. "Help me, please," a woman sobbed. I swallowed hard. Not tonight. The intercom cut off. Then the lights flickered. I closed my eyes, counting. 1, 2, 3. A cold breath brushed my neck. 4, 5, 6. Something clicked behind me. 7, 8, 9. The light stabilized. I opened my eyes. The man in the white coat stood outside the office, his face pressed against the glass, grinning. I didn't move, didn't breathe. After an eternity, he turned and walked away. Fifth night. The screaming started at midnight. It came from the East Wing, a howl of pure agony. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to run toward it. Then the cameras glitched. A figure stood in hallway B, a patient, their head tilted at an unnatural angle. I slammed the office door shut just as something scratched against the other side. The screaming stopped. Silence, then a whisper from the intercom. "You're next." Push on 7th night. I found the red door. It stood at the end of the hallway, where only a blank wall had been before. From behind it came the sound of weeping, a child's voice. "Let me out!" My hand hovered over the doorknob. Then I remembered Rule 8. I ran. Pshi, final night. Harris never told me the last rule. At 4:44 a.m., the power went out. The emergency lights flickered on, casting the asylum in an eerie red glow. On the security monitor, every camera showed the same thing. Marianne, standing in every hallway, every room, every corner, and she was smiling. I bolted for the exit, but the doors were locked. The intercom crackled. "You should have left when you had the chance." Behind me, the red door creaked open, and something stepped out. Epilogue. They found my security log the next morning. The last entry reads, "Rule 9, there is no Rule 9. My replacement starts tonight. I wonder if he'll last longer than I did." I took the night shift job at the Grayson Hill retirement home because I was desperate. After being laid off from my warehouse gig and 3 months of overdue rent notices piling up, working overnight at an old folks' home for a decent paycheck didn't sound half bad. The place was quiet, sterile, and smelled faintly of lemons and bleach. My boss, a woman named Gloria with sharp eyes and a colder smile, handed me a typed list of rules on my first night. She told me to read them carefully. I laughed nervously and asked if I was being hazed. She didn't smile. There's a reason we can't keep anyone on the night shift, she said. You follow these rules and you'll be fine. I looked at the sheet. There were only 6 rules. Night shift rules. Grayson Hill Retirement Home. 1. Do not enter room 6 under any circumstances. 2. If the light under room 6's door is on, call Gloria immediately. 3. At exactly 3:17 a.m., you must knock once on room 12's door, even if it's empty. 4. Do not speak to anyone who asks for Nurse Avery. Avery hasn't worked here in 20 years. 5. If you hear singing coming from the laundry room, lock the door and do not open it until sunrise. 6. At 4:04 a.m., the phone at the front desk will ring. Answer it. Listen. Do not speak. Hang up after exactly 60 seconds. Are these for real? I asked. Gloria looked at me, her expression stony. If you want to quit, now's the time. But I didn't quit. I needed the money. Besides, how bad could it be? Just a bunch of elderly people and a creepy rule sheet. I pocketed the paper and told myself it was just to keep rookies on edge. The first night passed without incident. I made my rounds, watched old TV shows on the break room couch, and even managed a short nap. Nothing weird happened. The second night, though, room 6's light was on. I was coming back from the break room with a lukewarm cup of coffee when I noticed it, the faint yellow glow seeping out from beneath the door. I froze. Room 6 had no occupant. I checked the logbook earlier. It was supposed to be locked and empty. The rules came flooding back into my head. Call Gloria. My hands trembled as I dialed. She picked up on the first ring. Don't go near it, she said immediately. You didn't touch the door, did you? No, I whispered. Good. It'll turn off in a few minutes. Stay away. If you see the door open, run and don't stop until you're outside the building. Click. I stood there, staring at that strip of golden light like it was going to grow teeth and bite me. After a few minutes, it blinked out just like she said. That night, I didn't sleep. The next few nights passed in a strange rhythm. I followed the rules like gospel. I knocked on room 12 at 3:17 a.m. exactly once. The door never opened, but sometimes I swear I could hear shuffling behind it. I answered the 4:04 a.m. call, holding the receiver in sweaty hands. A voice, low and male, would whisper things I couldn't quite make out. Once I thought it said, "He's watching from under the bed." But I never said a word. I hung up at 60 seconds on the dot. Then came the night I slipped up. I was walking past room 9 when an old woman poked her head out and said, "Excuse me, can you find Nurse Avery for me?" It caught me off guard. I'd had my earbuds in, listening to a podcast. I blinked at her. "Nurse Avery?" she repeated, her voice oddly flat. "The rules. Do not speak to anyone who asks for Nurse Avery." I'll check," I muttered before I could stop myself. Her face changed instantly. Her mouth widened, not into a smile, but a gaping, silent grin. Her eyes bulged and her neck tilted at an unnatural angle. She turned and walked backwards into her room, never breaking eye contact. The door slammed shut. I stood there, my heart thudding so loudly I thought it might wake everyone up. I went straight to the nurse's station and didn't move the rest of the night. The next day, Gloria called me into her office. She said nothing about the incident, but she watched me too closely. "Do you still want this job?" she asked. I nodded. Then no more mistakes. Night 10 was the worst. It started with the singing. At 2:43 a.m. I heard it, soft, lilting, like a lullaby from the 1930s. It came from the laundry room. My spine went rigid. I bolted down the hallway and locked the door, heart hammering. The singing stopped the moment the bolt slid into place. I didn't sleep, I didn't move. I just sat there watching the clock tick toward 3:17 a.m. I got up, staggered to room 12, and knocked once. The door creaked open. That had never happened before. Inside was darkness. No furniture, no windows, just darkness. I don't mean the lights were off. I mean the inside of that room looked like a hole had been punched in reality. The blackness swallowed the hallway light completely. Something moved inside. Not a person. Something too tall, too angular. Its arms were long, almost dragging the ground, and it was close. I felt the breath leave my body. The door slammed shut. I ran. At 4:04, the phone rang. I answered with shaking fingers. The whispering was faster now, frantic, words tripping over each other. This time I heard it clearly. "Room 6 is open. It's behind you." I turned. The hallway was empty. But down at the far end, room 6's door was wide open. Against every instinct in my body, I stepped closer. Just a little. The inside of room 6 was unlike the rest of the building. old wallpaper peeled from the walls, dark stains on the floor, and a mirror on the far side. There was someone in the mirror. It looked like me, but it wasn't. The reflection was grinning, wide and unnatural. I wasn't smiling. Then it waved. I slammed the door and sprinted to the front entrance. I waited outside in the cold until sunrise. When Gloria arrived, she handed me a cup of coffee and said nothing for a long time. Finally, she asked, "Did you go inside?" I shook my head. "Just looked." "Good. You'll last." I almost laughed. Last? Was that what this job was about? Survival? I told her I wanted to quit, that I couldn't do it anymore. She didn't try to stop me. "You're not the first," she said. "Most make it less than a week." "So why keep this place open?" I asked. Gloria looked down the hallway toward room 6. "Some doors should never be opened. Someone has to keep them closed." I didn't go back, but sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I swear I hear singing coming from my laundry room. And once, just once, I picked up a call that rang at 4:04 a.m. No one was on the other end, except breathing. The job listing was vague but promising. Night security guard, 25-hour, no experience required, must follow strict protocols. I was desperate, freshly laid off from my warehouse gig, so I applied. The interview was a phone call with a gravelly voice that didn't ask for my resume, just confirmed I could start that night at the old textile factory on the edge of town. "Read the rules carefully," the voice said before hanging up. I thought it was odd, but figured it was just corporate nonsense. At 10:45 p.m., I pulled into the factory's gravel lot. The building loomed like a forgotten relic, its windows dark, the brick facade crumbling. A single flickering streetlight cast long shadows across the lot. Inside, the air smelled of rust and mildew. The front office had a desk, a flickering fluorescent light, and a laminated sheet titled "Night Shift Protocols." No one was there to greet me, just a key and a flashlight waiting on the desk. The rules were strange. I scanned them, my stomach twisting. Do not look directly at the mirrors in the break room between 2 a.m. and 2:15 a.m. If you see your reflection, leave the room immediately and lock the door until 3 a.m. If you hear humming from the boiler room, turn on the red switch by the east stairwell within 60 seconds. Failure to do so will result in disciplinary action. The vending machine in hallway C dispenses items without payment. Do not eat or drink anything it gives you. Discard all items in the incinerator. At 4 a.m., check the security cameras. If camera 7 shows a figure in a gray coat, do not leave the office until sunrise. If the phone rings, answer it. If no one speaks, hang up after exactly 13 seconds. If a voice speaks, do not respond. Never enter the basement, even if you hear someone calling your name. Complete all rounds by 5 a.m. If you see footprints in the dust that aren't yours, walk backward to the office and lock the door until your shift ends. I laughed nervously. This had to be a prank, right? Some hazing for the new guy. But the pay was good, and I needed the money. I pocketed the key, grabbed the flashlight, and started my first round. The factory was a maze of cavernous rooms filled with rusted machinery, dangling chains, and piles of rotting fabric. My footsteps echoed, the only sound in the oppressive silence. The flashlight beam barely cut through the darkness, and every shadow seemed to twitch. I checked the break room first, noting the cracked mirrors on the wall. It was 11:30 p.m., so I didn't think much of Rule 1. The vending machine in hallway C hummed faintly, its lights flickering. A candy bar slid into the dispenser slot as I passed. I ignored it, remembering Rule 3, and moved on. By midnight, the place felt alive in the worst way. The pipes groaned, and distant clanks echoed from deep within the building. I chalked it up to old infrastructure settling, but my skin prickled. My first round was uneventful, and I returned to the office, checking the security monitors. All clear. Camera 7 showed an empty loading dock. I exhaled, trying to shake the unease. At 1:45 a.m., I started my second round. The boiler room was on the route, a heavy iron door at the end of a narrow hall. As I approached, a low hum vibrated through the floor. My heart skipped. Rule 2. I sprinted to the east stairwell, fumbling with the flashlight to find the red switch mounted on the wall. I flipped it just as the humming grew louder, almost melodic. It stopped abruptly. I stood there, panting, unsure what I'd just prevented. The silence that followed felt heavier, like the building was holding its breath. Back in the break room, I checked the time. 2:03 a.m. Rule 1. I avoided the mirrors, keeping my eyes on the floor. But the air felt wrong, thick, like I was being watched. A faint tap, tap, tap came from behind one of the mirrors. I froze, my pulse hammering. The sound stopped, but I didn't wait to find out what it was. I bolted out, locking the door as the rule instructed. My hand shook as I leaned against the wall, waiting for 3:00 a.m. The phone rang at 3:15 a.m. I stared at it, Rule 5 flashing in my mind. I picked up the receiver, holding my breath. Silence. I counted to 13 in my head, then hung up. The quiet was deafening. I checked the cameras again. Camera 7 was still empty. I tried to convince myself this was just a creepy old building playing tricks on my nerves. By 4 a.m. I was exhausted, but forced myself to check the cameras again. My blood ran cold. On camera 7, a figure stood in the loading dock, motionless, wearing a gray coat. Its face was obscured, but it was tall, unnaturally thin, and its head tilted slightly, as if listening. Rule 4. Do not leave the office until sunrise. I locked the door, my hands trembling, and sat back, eyes glued to the screen. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, hour after hour, until the first light of dawn crept through the office window. When I checked again at 6 a.m., it was gone. I thought that was the worst of it. I was wrong. On my second night, the rules felt less like a prank and more like a warning. The humming from the boiler room came earlier at 1 a.m. I flipped the red switch in time, but the humming didn't stop. It grew louder, more insistent, like a voice trapped in the walls. I checked the rule sheet again, but there was no guidance for this. I moved on, avoiding the break room mirrors as the clock ticked past 2 a.m. In hallway C, the vending machine was active again. This time, it dispensed a can of soda that rolled toward my feet. I kicked it away, remembering Rule 3, but as I turned, I heard a soft pop and a hiss, like the can had opened itself. A sweet, chemical smell filled the air. I ran to the incinerator, tossing the can inside without looking back. The smell lingered on my clothes. At 4 a.m., I checked the cameras. The figure in the gray coat was back, but this time it was closer to camera 7, its head tilted at an impossible angle. I locked the office door and waited, my flashlight flickering. The power surged and the monitors blinked off for a moment. When they came back on, the figure was gone. I didn't feel relieved. The phone rang at 4:30 a.m. I answered, counting to 13. But this time, a voice whispered, "You didn't lock the basement door." My stomach dropped. I hadn't gone near the basement. Rule 6 was clear. But I hadn't checked if it was locked. The line went dead before I could hang up. I grabbed the key and flashlight, breaking Rule 4 out of sheer panic. I had to make sure the basement was secure. The basement door was at the end of a long, unlit corridor. As I approached, I heard my name, soft and pleading from behind the door. It sounded like my sister, who I hadn't spoken to in years. Rule 6 screamed in my mind, "Never enter the basement." I checked the lock. It was secure. The voice called again, louder, more desperate. I backed away, my heart pounding, and ran to the office. On my final round at 4:45 a.m., I saw them, footprints in the dust, small and bare, leading toward the boiler room. Rule 7. I walked backward, as instructed, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The footprints stopped abruptly, as if whoever made them had vanished. I locked myself in the office until 6 a.m., when my shift ended. I didn't look at the cameras again. I quit the next morning, leaving the key and a note that said, "Find someone else." I didn't care about the money, but the rules followed me. At home, my phone rang at 3:15 a.m. I didn't answer, but the voicemail played on its own. 13 seconds of silence, then a whisper. "You didn't finish your rounds." Last night, I found a candy bar on my kitchen counter, the vending machine kind. I burned it in my backyard, but the sweet chemical smell lingers, and sometimes in the quiet, I hear humming. I was desperate when I took the night shift job at Haverly Mental Care Facility. It was an ancient building, half forgotten in the woods outside town, and no one stayed employed there long. The pay was double minimum wage, and the requirements were suspiciously light. No medical experience necessary, just a willingness to follow the rules. When I showed up for my first shift, the day nurse Clarice handed me a laminated sheet titled Rules for the Third Floor, Night Staff Only. She didn't smile. "Whatever happens," she said, "follow the rules exactly. Don't improvise. Don't ask why." I glanced at the list. It was 10 rules long. Rules for the third floor, night staff only. 1. Clock in by 10 p.m. sharp, not 10:01. 2. Never take the elevator between 3 a.m. and 3:17 a.m. 3. If you hear crying in room 302, knock once and say, "I hear you," then walk away. 4. Don't turn off the hallway lights. If they flicker, let them. 5. Avoid looking directly into room 309, even if the door is open. 6. The man in the suit may ask you for directions. Don't speak, don't point. Just smile and keep walking. 7. At exactly 2:42 a.m., check the mirror at the end of the hall. Don't blink. 8. If you see someone who looks like you, immediately return to the first floor and wait 10 minutes. 9. Never ever take anything from the red cart. 10. When you clock out at 6 a.m., do not look back at the third floor. Seriously? I asked. This is some kind of hazing ritual, right? Clarice gave me a flat look. Break one, and you'll see. Just make it through the night. I laughed awkwardly, but she didn't join in. Then she handed me the keys and left. The third floor smelled of bleach and rust, the kind that stays in your nose. The hallway stretched long, lined with identical white doors with peeling numbers. No sounds but the hum of the lights. By midnight, I was bored out of my mind. Nothing had happened. No crying, no men in suits, no weird doubles. I checked room 302 just to be safe. Silent, empty. At 2:42 a.m., I stood in front of the mirror at the end of the hallway. I felt stupid, but I stared without blinking like the rule said. My reflection stared back, tired, bags under my eyes, but normal. I turned away. Then I froze. In the mirror's corner, my reflection hadn't moved. I spun around. No one there. I looked again. My reflection caught up, moving normally now. I laughed it off. Maybe I blinked and didn't notice. At 2:59 a.m., I passed the elevator, heading to check room 305. Just as I passed, the elevator dinged. The doors opened. No one was there. I remembered Rule 2 and checked the time. 3 a.m. on the dot. I backed away. The elevator stayed open, humming like it was waiting for me. A soft voice echoed from inside. Going up? I ran. I locked myself in the supply closet until 3:18. When I came out, the elevator doors were closed. At 3:26 a.m., I heard it, the crying. Soft, distant, but unmistakable. Room 302. I approached slowly. The crying got louder. It wasn't like an adult sobbing. It was a child, gasping and hiccuping between wails. I stood outside the door. My hand trembled as I knocked once. "I hear you," I whispered. The crying stopped. I walked away fast. I didn't dare look back. Then came the worst part. At 4:12 a.m., while making rounds, I turned a corner and saw someone walking toward me. Same uniform, same walk, same face. It was me. I gasped and stumbled back. My double stared blankly, then turned into room 309. I remembered Rule 8. I bolted for the stairs, down to the first floor. I sat in the break room, heart pounding, watching the clock tick past 10 minutes. I returned to the third floor. The hallway was silent. Room 309's door was cracked open. I didn't look inside. I wanted to quit right then, but 6 a.m. was only an hour away. I just had to make it until then. At 5:50 a.m., I passed the red cart. It hadn't been there before. It sat by the nurse's station, full of syringes, gauze, and old metal tools. Everything was red, not just the cart, but the tools too. Blood, red. I felt a strange pull toward it. My hand reached out without thinking. Rule 9. I yanked my hand back. The lights flickered violently. I remembered Rule 4 and froze. Then I heard footsteps behind me, not walking, dragging. I turned slowly. A man in a black suit stood 10 feet away. His eyes were white. No pupils, no irises, just blank white spheres. He smiled. "Excuse me," he said. I seemed to be lost. Which way to the elevator? My throat went dry. My brain screamed to run, to speak, but I remembered Rule 6. Don't speak. Don't point. Just smile. So I smiled. A fake, trembling smile. He didn't blink, didn't breathe. After a long moment, he walked past me. His shoes click, drag, click, drag. Then silence. At 5:59 a.m., I stood by the stairwell staring at my watch. 6 a.m., I clocked out on my tablet and started walking. Then I remembered Rule 10. Don't look back. The stairwell door creaked open behind me. Something stepped through. I kept walking. Click, drag. I didn't look back. When I returned the next night, Clarice met me at the desk. "You made it," she said, sounding surprised. "Most don't last past the mirror." I asked her how long she'd been working there. She looked down at her hands. "I've never left," she said. She handed me an updated rule sheet. There were 11 rules now. The new one was scrawled in handwriting that didn't match the others. If someone tells you there are only 10 rules, they're lying. Don't trust them. I looked at Clarice. She looked back, unreadable. That night, the man in the suit wasn't the only one who smiled at me in the hallway. The job listing was simple. Night shift clerk needed at Holloway gas station. 25-hour. Must follow rules strictly. No prior experience required. At the time, the pay seemed too good to be true. But after 3 months of unemployment, I wasn't in a position to question it. I applied, got a call within an hour, and was hired on the spot. The manager, a gaunt man with sunken eyes named Mr. Holloway, no relation to the station's name, he assured me, handed me a single sheet of paper on my first night. "Memorize these," he said. "Follow them exactly. If you don't, you won't last the night." I laughed, thinking it was some kind of joke. He didn't laugh back. Rules for the night shift at Holloway gas station. 1. Never leave the counter between 12:30 a.m. and 3:30 a.m. No matter what you hear, no matter who knocks, stay behind the register. If you leave, you won't make it back. 2. If a customer pays with coins from before 1965, refuse the sale. Say, "I'm sorry, we don't accept these." Do not touch the coins. If they insist, walk away and wait until they leave. 3. The security cameras don't work between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. If you see movement on the screens during that time, ignore it. Do not investigate. 4. The phone will ring exactly once at 2:17 a.m. Let it ring. Do not answer. 5. If a woman in a red dress enters, do not make eye contact. Serve her quickly and say nothing. If she asks for cigarettes, tell her, "We're out." She will leave. 6. The refrigerators at the back of the store will sometimes open by themselves. If you see this, close them immediately. Do not look inside. 7. At 3:33 a.m., a man in a black coat will enter. He will ask for the usual. Give him a pack of Marlboro Reds and a lighter. Do not ask for payment. 8. If the lights flicker, hold your breath until they stop. 9. Do not, under any circumstances, go into the storage room after midnight. Even if you hear crying, even if you hear your name. 10. If you break any of these rules, run. Don't look back. Don't stop until sunrise. I scoffed. This is a joke, right? Mr. Holloway's expression didn't change. No. Break a rule and you'll find out why this job pays so well. He left without another word. The first night. The first few hours were uneventful. A couple of truckers, a group of teenagers buying energy drinks, nothing unusual. Then, at exactly 12:30 a.m., the silence settled in. No cars, no wind, just the hum of the fluorescent lights. At 1 a.m., the security screens flickered and went dark. My stomach tightened. The cameras don't work between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. Rule 3 echoed in my head. Then, movement. A shadow passed by one of the cameras inside the store. But I was alone. I gripped the counter, forcing myself to look away. Ignore it. The refrigerators at the back of the store suddenly swung open with a loud creak. My heart pounded. Rule 6. Close them immediately. Do not look inside. I rushed over, keeping my eyes fixed on the floor. As I pushed the doors shut, something wet brushed my fingers. I yanked my hand back. Something was in there. I ran back to the counter, my breath ragged. At 2:17 a.m., the phone rang. A shrill, piercing sound. I clenched my fists, letting it ring. After 4 tones, it stopped. Silence again. Then the door chimed. A woman in a red dress walked in. She was beautiful, unnaturally so. Her skin was too pale, her smile too wide. Rule 5 flashed in my mind. Do not make eye contact. I stared at the register as she approached. "Cigarettes," she said. Her voice was like nails on glass. "We're out," I muttered. She leaned closer. I could smell something rotten beneath her perfume. "Are you sure?" I nodded, gripping the counter. She lingered for a moment, then turned and left. The door didn't make a sound when she exited. At 3:33 a.m., the man in the black coat arrived. Tall, thin, his face hidden under a wide-brimmed hat. He stopped in front of the counter. "The usual," he said. I handed him the Marlboros and lighter without a word. He took them, tilted his head, and walked out. The rest of the night passed in a blur. At 6 a.m., Mr. Holloway returned. "You're still here?" he said, almost disappointed. "Good, you followed the rules." The Force E, the second night. I almost didn't come back, but $25 an hour was too much to walk away from. This night was worse. At 1:30 a.m., the refrigerators opened again. I closed them, ignoring the wet, slithering sounds inside. At 2:17 a.m., the phone rang. I let it. Then, at 2:45 a.m., I heard it. A child's voice, whimpering from the storage room. "Help me, please!" My blood turned to ice. Rule 9. Do not go into the storage room after midnight. But the voice sounded so real, so scared. "Hello?" I called out. "Stupid." The crying grew louder. "I'm hurt. Please." I took a step toward the door. Then the lights flickered. Rule 8. Hold your breath until they stop. I sucked in air and froze. The crying turned into a guttural growl. The storage room door rattled. Something slammed against it from the inside. The light stabilized. The noise stopped. I exhaled, shaking. The third night. I was getting used to the rules, or so I thought. At 12:45 a.m., a man in a flannel shirt walked in. He dumped a handful of coins on the counter. "I need gas," he slurred. I looked down. The coins were old, really old. Wheat pennies, silver dimes. Rule 2, do not touch them. "I'm sorry, we don't accept these," I said. His grin widened. "Sure you do." I stepped back. "No, we don't." His face darkened. "Take the money." I turned and walked into the break room, locking the door behind me. 5 minutes later, I returned. He was gone. The coins were still there, and they were covered in fresh blood. The final night. I should have quit, but I needed the money. At 3 a.m., the lights flickered. I held my breath. They stayed off. The emergency lights kicked in, casting the store in an eerie red glow. Then, the sound of the storage room door creaking open. A voice whispered my name, not a child's voice. She died 5 years ago. Sweetheart, I'm here. Come to me." Tears welled in my eyes. It sounded exactly like her. I took a step forward. Then the rules flashed in my mind. Do not go into the storage room. If you break any of these rules, run. I bolted for the exit. Behind me, the voice shrieked. No longer human. The shelves toppled. Glass shattered. Something heavy and fast scrabbled after me. I didn't look back. I ran until the sun rose. Epilogue. Mr. Holloway called the next day. "You broke Rule 9, he said, but you followed Rule 10, that's why you're alive." I never went back. But sometimes at night I hear a knock at my door, and a voice that sounds like Mr. Holloway whispers, "We still need a night shift clerk." The fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered above the reception desk at Hollow Pines General Hospital, casting jagged shadows that danced across the worn linoleum floor. I'd taken the night shift security job because it paid better than any gig I'd found with just a high school diploma and a clean record. But as I sat at the desk on my first night, flipping through the tattered employee handbook, a chill settled into my bones. The hospital, a crumbling relic from the 1940s, had a reputation. Whispers of hauntings, abandoned wings, and strange occurrences. I'd brushed it off as small-town gossip, but the handbook's final pages made me question that dismissal. Tucked at the back, in smudged, handwritten ink, was a section labeled Night Shift Protocols. The rules were bizarre, each one more unsettling than the last. They read like a warning from someone who'd seen something they couldn't unsee. Night shift protocols do not look directly at the clock between 2 a.m. and 2:03 a.m. If you hear ticking, close your eyes and count to 10. Open them only when the ticking stops. If you see a patient in a red gown, do not acknowledge them. Walk past as if they aren't there. Do not make eye contact. The third-floor elevator must not be used after midnight. If it opens on its own, step back and say, "I'm not ready yet." Do not enter. If you hear singing from the pediatric wing, lock the security office door and do not leave until sunrise. At 3:33 a.m., check all mirrors in the staff bathroom. If you see someone behind you who isn't there, leave the room immediately and do not return until your shift ends. Never respond to a call from room 413. If the intercom buzzes from that room, unplug it and report it as faulty in the morning. If you find a child's drawing on the floor, do not pick it up. Step around it and report its location to maintenance at the end of your shift. I read the list 3 times, waiting for the punchline. Was this a prank for new hires? The hospital's eerie reputation was one thing, but these rules felt like they belonged in a horror story. I glanced at the clock, 11:47 p.m. My shift had just begun, And already the air felt too thick, the silence too heavy, like the building was watching me. The night started quietly. I did my first round, flashlight in hand, patrolling the dimly lit hallways of the first floor. Hollow Pines was understaffed, with only me, a janitor named Carl who muttered to himself and avoided eye contact, and a nurse named Evelyn whose sunken eyes and curt nods suggested she'd seen too much to care. Most patients were asleep, their rooms lit by the soft glow of monitors. The only sounds were the occasional beep of a machine and the creak of the old building settling, or so I told myself. At 12:15 a.m., I was back at the desk when the elevator dinged. My heart lurched. I hadn't pressed the call button and no one else was around. The doors slid open, revealing an empty car. Rule 3 flashed in my mind. The third-floor elevator must not be used after midnight. I glanced at the panel above the doors. The light for the third floor was lit. My mouth went dry. "I'm not ready yet," I whispered, my voice trembling. The doors stayed open for a long moment, then closed with a soft thud. I didn't dare check where it went. By 1 a.m., my nerves were frayed. The hospital felt alive, its shadows shifting just out of sight. I decided to do another round to shake off the unease. As I passed the pediatric wing, I froze. A faint melodic sound drifted through the air. A lullaby, soft and haunting, sung in a child's voice. Rule 4. If you hear singing from the pediatric wing, lock the security office door and do not leave until sunrise. My pulse raced as I hurried back to the office, my footsteps echoing too loudly. I locked the door, hands shaking, and sat at the desk, staring at the grainy security monitors. The singing continued, seeping through the walls, clear and unbroken, like it was coming from inside the room. I checked the pediatric wing feed. Empty beds, empty halls, yet the singing didn't stop. At 1:30 a.m., I noticed something on the floor near the office door, a piece of paper I hadn't seen before. It was a child's drawing, crudely done in crayon. A stick figure in a red gown standing under a black sun. Rule 7. If you find a child's drawing on the floor, do not pick it up. My skin crawled as I stepped around it, careful not to touch it. I made a mental note to report it to maintenance, though the idea of anyone coming to collect it felt absurd. Where had it come from? I hadn't heard anyone pass by. At 2:00 a.m., Rule 1 loomed. The office clock, an old analog relic, ticked toward the hour. I didn't know what would happen if I looked, but I wasn't taking chances. When the second hand hit 12, I squeezed my eyes shut. Immediately, a loud, deliberate ticking filled the room, not from the clock, but from everywhere, vibrating in my skull like a warning. I counted to 10, heart pounding, sweat beating on my forehead. When I reached 10, the ticking stopped. I opened my eyes. The clock read 2:04 a.m. I exhaled, but the relief was short-lived. At 2:30 a.m., I saw her on the monitors, a woman in a red gown standing motionless at the end of the second-floor hallway. Her head was tilted at an unnatural angle, her face obscured by shadows. Rule 2. Do not acknowledge them. I forced myself to look away, focusing on the desk, my hands clenched into fists. When I glanced back at the monitor, she was gone. But a moment later, I heard footsteps outside the office door, slow, deliberate, like bare feet on linoleum. I held my breath, praying they'd pass. They stopped just outside. The doorknob rattled once, then went silent. I didn't move until I was sure the sound was gone. By 3 a.m., I was a wreck, jumping at every creak. Rule 5 was next. Check the staff bathroom mirrors at 3:33 a.m. I dreaded it, but ignoring the rules wasn't an option. I grabbed my flashlight and headed to the second-floor bathroom, a small, dingy room with a cracked mirror above a rusted sink. The fluorescent light buzzed, casting a sickly glow. I stood in front of the mirror, my reflection pale and haggard. I checked behind me. Nothing. But as I turned to leave, I saw it. A figure in the mirror, a woman in a red gown, her face blurred like a smudged photo standing just over my shoulder. I spun around, but the room was empty. In the mirror, she was still there, her head tilting slowly, as if studying me. Rule 5. Leave the room immediately. I bolted, slamming the door behind me, my heart hammering. Back in the office, I tried to focus, but the night wasn't done with me. At 3:45 a.m., the intercom crackled. "Security, this is room 4113. We need assistance." The voice was low, guttural, barely human. Rule 6, never respond to a call from room 4113. I lunged for the intercom, yanking the plug from the wall. The voice cut off, but a moment later, it spoke again, this time from the air itself. "Why won't you help us?" I froze, my blood turning to ice. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in. I didn't plug the intercom back in. At 4:15 a.m., another encounter. I was checking the first-floor hallway when I saw a shadow move in the corner of my eye, a small figure, child-sized, darting around a corner. I followed, against my better judgment, and found another drawing on the floor. A crayon sketch of a child holding hands with a figure in a red gown, both standing in a room labeled 413. I stepped around it, my skin prickling, and kept moving. As I turned the corner, I saw the child again. A fleeting glimpse of a pale figure in a hospital gown, disappearing into the stairwell. I didn't follow this time. The final hours were torture. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound felt like a threat. At 5 a.m., I heard the singing again, louder now, coming from the pediatric wing. I stayed locked in the office, watching the monitors flicker. Once I swore I saw the woman in the red gown standing in the office doorway on the feed, but when I turned, it was empty. At 5:30 a.m., the elevator dinged again. I didn't look. When 6:20 a.m. hit, the sun rose, and the hospital seemed to exhale. The oppressive weight lifted, and the building felt almost normal. I clocked out, legs shaky, and left without a word to Carl or Evelyn. I quit a week later, unable to face another night. The rules haunted me, as did the drawings, the singing, the woman in the red gown. I still avoid mirrors at night and check the time obsessively, steering clear of 2 a.m. Sometimes, in the quiet, I hear that lullaby, faint and distant, like a warning from Hollow Pines General. The hospital still stands, still hiring night shift guards. I pass it sometimes, its windows dark and lifeless. I wonder if the new hires get the same handbook, the same rules. I wonder what happens to those who don't follow them. And I wonder what's in room 413, waiting for someone to answer its call. Thank you for listening. Hope I didn't scare you too much. If you like my stories, please consider giving me a like and subscribe. See you next time.